And so you have 4 minutes.
Okay. Hi, I'm Susan Summers. This is Lena Jax, my daughter, and we have another daughter at home. And I'm here kind of in 2 capacities, wearing 2 hats today. Number 1, I'm president of the board of directors of Aura. And number 2, I live nearby this neighborhood. In fact, we're zoned to Pillow Elementary, although we do not live in North Shoal Creek neighborhood officially. So Aura in general has a position, and it's in our code and expectations that were set out 3 years ago now, basically, that says that we generally oppose neighborhood plans. The neighborhood planning process in Austin has been co-opted generally by wealthier single-family homeowners that are not representative of the demographics of our city. And so I think that's just a challenge that we have. And until we figure out a way that we can actually fix our neighborhood planning process to be more integrated and representative of the people that live in our city, I'm very, very skeptical and sort of oppositional to neighborhood plans in general. So that's the Aura hat, and I think some more people will speak to that behind me. But speaking in the hat of somebody that lives in this near this neighborhood, who goes to the village library quite frequently, who goes roller skating at the roller rink, and also we're zoned to Pillow. We actually don't go there. Largely custody. We live in me and Lena's father live in different parts of the city. But, and in fact, the apartments that we live in, probably about 1.5 miles north, it's at Burnett and Gracie Farms. I don't know that many people that go to Pillow because they don't feel that they're part of that community. A lot of them go, so I know people, we go to Pease Elementary downtown. I know people in our apartment complex that go to Matthews, that go to Harmony School of Science, all over, but a lot of them don't go to Pillow because we're not really in that community. And I have another child at home who's 1, who I've got to rush home and breastfeed when I get home, and she might go to Pillow, but we feel like we're not really able to access that neighborhood. Getting south of 183 is something that we'd really like to. I work at UT. My husband's ACC adjunct instructor, and we'd like to get closer in, but it's just proven really hard. And I wrote a blog post about this neighborhood plan, and it's just so notable to me that not even one street is zoned for, like, they don't talk about townhouses. They talk about protection. And I'm always wondering, like, protection from what? Protection from me? You know, like, I live right by this area. And when I hear words like refrigerator boxes and things like that, that's just really feels crummy. That feels yucky to me. It feels really super yucky because, you know, we've been in this apartment complex for 7 years, would love to get into a townhouse or something a little bit larger, or own our own place, and that's just not really an option for us. We're committed to staying in AISD because I love sort of the social justice mission at AISD, and if I move any farther out, I'm not in AISD anymore. So I just think this neighborhood plan, it's being built as a kinder, gentler neighborhood plan, and in some ways it is. I acknowledge this in my blog post that I wrote on Austin on Your Feet. It does contemplate some transition zones, but as pointed out, a lot of the areas that are transition zones, they may be zoned commercial now, but they already have apartments on them. So, I mean, I just think that building corridors, the grand bargain, we've heard a lot about the grand bargain, the Austin bargain. Like, who made that bargain, right? So, like, super density on corridors. I think our families in Austin want to live in townhouses, in small apartment complexes. I think it's pretty silly. I think it's just ludicrous to think that these threaten people, that these hurt people. I'm not a threat. And I am a person of fairly privilege, you know? Anyway, I'm an average family, 100% MFI, so.
Thank you. Questions for our speaker? Before you walk away, Commissioner Knuckles.
So it's plain 31% of the neighborhood is going to be zoned to allow increased residential density. And it's going to allow, as I understand it, this wide variety of housing choices that could include townhomes that you could live in. Do you support that aspect of the plan?
I talk about this in the blog post that I wrote, and I would definitely refer you to that. I do think it is better than many other neighborhood plans we have seen. I do not think it is enough. I do not think it represents housing justice. I just don't. I think there needs to be more. I think we need more housing. I don't think that small apartment complexes, fourplexes, sixplexes, townhouses, I don't think that those in neighborhood interiors are a threat to anyone. I think that's just housing, that's just families. So while I will acknowledge that this is much better, I would prefer this to many of the mid-2000s neighborhood plans that have been put out there. It is not enough. It does not represent the vision of justice that I would have for this city.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for a speaker? Commissioner Hart.
And I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to read your blog post. Were there any specific recommendations that you had for this plan?
Yes, I argued in that blog post that we should select a few neighborhood interior streets. I think Steck and Rockwood would be great examples of smaller neighborhood collectors that would be great to zone for townhouses. Personally, I see no reason why we shouldn't allow fourplexes and small apartment complexes throughout the residential core. I also talk about connectivity because one of the ways that's really important for mobility and access to transit is that people can adequately walk to transit. There are areas within this neighborhood where people basically share a backyard, but because of disconnectivity, that was talked about the way that neighborhoods were planned in the 50s and 60s with disconnectivity, people might have to walk a really long way or get back, this is in the blog post, but get back out on like the MOPAC access road to walk around to their neighbor's house. So I think that also identifying areas where you could reconnect the grid in this neighborhood would be very key, and not just from the perspective of people walking around and having a great walking experience in their neighborhood, but also from the perspective of being able to walk to transit stops and bus stops, which was a priority that the neighborhood, I think, rightly did identify in the plan. And I think there's some intriguing things like that in the plan where people wanted access to transit. So let's figure out ways to make that connectivity and that walkability to transit stops happen as well. So those are my two, I think, biggest takeaways is like figure out connectivity and also let's get some more townhouses. Let's upzone a few of the smaller streets to allow more density within the neighborhood interior.
Thank you both for making the effort to be here.
Thanks.
And Commissioner Shaw, you are so, hold on, sorry.
I think it's very important to for communication to renters and others when these planning processes take place. And I was impressed with Sharon Justice when she went through the different modes and types of communication. But I think one of your complaints was the lack of communication. So would you have any recommendations to add to her list of what they did do for maybe if we had to do this again to improve outreach and bring other people into the planning process?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I feel like I'm a bit of a stakeholder, even though, because we're zoned to Pillow, but we don't live there. I know there was some outreach to the PTA, and obviously, as I stated, we go to Pease Elementary downtown, but I think that figuring out ways that, like, looking at places where there's these huge swaths of apartment complexes up on Gracie Farms that are zoned to this neighborhood, I'm telling you, in my experience, a lot of the people and families in my apartment complex don't go to those schools. Reaching out to those folks. Maybe those folks are like, hey, I'd love to go to Pillow, but, we're not really in that neighborhood. Maybe we'd like to get in that neighborhood. Talk to those folks. Go door to door, in the apartment complexes. Reach out to the apartment management companies. Get them to come. So I think that it's not that hard. We kind of tie ourselves in knots about, but there are ways we can do it. When I talk to Cat Metro and they're like, oh, we'd like to talk to bus riders. I'm like, just put people on the buses. People on the buses, I ride the bus all the time. People on the bus love to talk to you. Get somebody on the 803. There's a ton of people that get off at that Crossroads stop, at the stop just south of there. Talk to those people. See what they say. Get people who are getting off the bus stop and talk to them. That's how you hit renters, because those are probably people riding the bus. So those are just some ideas. I don't know all it was stated because we had to. I took my kid out to get some chill time, but I don't know. I think there's a lot of things that we can do that we don't do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, we'll turn to our next speaker. Josiah.